Hello and welcome back to another episode of The Walk and Talk, the dog training podcast designed to take the what the hell am I supposed to do here out of dog ownership and instead fill that void with joy, excitement and enthusiasm for the adventure that is sharing a decade of your life or more with your four-legged bestie. So, how are we all doing on this bleak January day? Are we okay? Are we holding up all right against all of the snow and the rain and the mud and the cold? I'm sorry, this is a very miserable way to start a podcast episode about joy and enthusiasm for dog ownership, isn't it? I think it's the Blue Monday energy. We are only 3 days away, if you are listening on release day, from Blue Monday, which is supposedly the most miserable day of the year, and it's clearly coming for me. Anyway, that's not true. It's not true at all. Let's not be miserable. We've got no time for that. I'm not feeling miserable. We are here today to figure out how we can make your life better, easier, and more wonderful. And this week, we are going to do that via the medium of a calm, contented, and far more settled dog because I don't know about you, but when my dogs are fizzy, whatever the reason, you know what I mean by fizzy. If you have a young dog or a working breed or whatever, it's just that constant state of readiness and having a full battery that is almost too full. When my dogs are there, but I actually just need to have 2 or 3 hours at my desk, or I'm not feeling very well, or I just don't have the range for it for whatever reason, that can be really challenging. And truth be told, I've been teetering on the brink of being there a bit more often lately because I think I mentioned this already last week in last week's episode, but Albie, my youngest dog, he's a 2-year-old poodle cross, he has an injury. So physically, his exercise outlet is somewhat limited at the moment. Now, I had planned for this not to be a problem because we would be really stretching his brain instead with all of the new physio stuff that we are supposed to be doing anyway. And we'd be replacing um, all of his higher intensity exercise with longer, slower adventures, sniffy walks, all of that good stuff. However, life is lifing at me, as it always does, of course. And I'm finding myself with not enough hours in the day at present for all of the idealistic, wonderful fairy tale exercise plans that I had dreamed up. I'm playing catch up from the Christmas break still. So we now have some renovations on the house underway, which is always fun with dogs, isn't it? And I have a lot of family commitments demanding a lot of my free time as well. So let's talk about these fizzy dogs and what the hell we are actually supposed to do with them when the going gets rough. Because generally, I think, right, a lot of the advice out there about tiring your dog out, in inverted commas, just doesn't really hit the mark. We have been led to believe that the solution, the only solution to a high energy, reactive, overstimulated dog is simply more exercise, more running, more intense activity, more ball throwing, longer walks. But what we don't often hear about, and this is what I want to unpack and explore today, because I'm sat here right now with a fizzy dog who is not in a position to run or chase or grind himself into exhaustion through exertion, is the concept of regulation versus exertion. So that's regulating your dog's nervous system rather than just trying to exhaust them physically. And I promise you that a deeper understanding of this makes a massive difference in creating the calm, connected, and manageable dog that so many of us crave. So let's start at the very beginning. When we talk about regulation, what we're really talking about is giving your dog the tools and experiences they need to stay in a balanced state. So you can think of it like this: dogs, just like people, have nervous systems that can get overstimulated, and likewise, they can also be understimulated. Now, overstimulation might look like barking, spinning, jumping, lunging, zooming around the house, hypervigilance, reactivity, just general hard work energy, right? And understimulation might look like boredom, scavenging, chewing, persistent attention seeking, or maybe destructive behavior around the house. And so, regulation is about helping your dog manage their own energy in a healthier way. It's about teaching them to move between states like they're alert, they're engaged, they're relaxed, all of these different states of being without tipping over into stress or overstimulation. And the first thing it's really important to understand is that regulation is really something that we teach and we build and we grow and we have to invest in. It's not something for most dogs that just comes automatically just because we have exercised the dog enough, and that should be it. Now, before anyone comes to cancel me, I am absolutely categorically not saying that exercise isn't important at all. Exercise really is so important. It absolutely matters. It matters a lot. Dogs need physical activity. These are not sedentary animals. They are not designed to thrive as sloths. Well, to be fair, I do know some dogs who are actually living their best lives as sloths, but it's not the norm, okay? And depending on the breed of your dog and the task they were originally bred for, some dogs will require a substantial amount of movement per day. There's no two ways about it. I'm not saying don't do that. You cannot simply licky mat your way to a sleepy 2-year-old working line Labrador. Not long term. Absolutely not. But here's where most people get it wrong when they first start to run into signs of difficulty. And this is usually during adolescence. And that is that they use exercise as just a basic blunt instrument to try and fix that behavioral problem. Like, my dog has become a total wildling. He barks at the window all day. He jumps up at everyone who enters the house. So, what can I do? I will just get up 3 hours earlier than normal. I will run him ragged with a back to back game of fetch in the biggest open space I can find. And then, of course, he will be calm and magnificent at home. And yes, sometimes this works in the short term. If you exhaust a dog enough, they will sleep. Of course, they will. A really long run can bring down arousal temporarily sometimes. But then it's a dangerous game, right? Because actually, if you get it wrong, what you actually do is you just ramp up the dog's arousal, because for a lot of dogs, back-to-back tennis ball chasing in a frenzy will do that. And then you actually end up bringing them home in a worse state than they woke up in, because they're now full of adrenaline and they're high as a kite on the thrill of the chase, and they're not exhausted either because you didn't go long enough to totally grind them down. So you've basically just taken your high drive dog and given them a Red Bull, and brought them home right after sipping that Red Bull. So now they're wired and they're bringing that energy back into your house, and that's not what you wanted. But even in the cases where it does work, because you've committed yourself to not going home until your dog is absolutely wiped out physically and you can see that they're on their last legs, this fix can only ever be temporary, because it's not teaching the dog any kind of self-regulation skills at all, not to mention the serious risk of injury, right? And like I just said, for some dogs, especially like the highly reactive, highly sensitive, intense exercise can definitely backfire because their nervous system isn't balanced after something like that. It's just been stimulated in a different way. Also, you've got to think about that physical exercise ultimately as a depreciating asset in your toolkit, because every time you exercise your dog like that, you are actually building their stamina and their strength and their resilience. So over time, it's just going to take harder and harder bouts of physical activity to achieve the same level of exhaustion that wore them out on day one. You're not going to be able to keep up with that little canine athlete that you are unwittingly creating with all of these training sessions, right? So, if we're not doing it like that and we need to think more about getting our dogs regulated instead, let's talk about what that actually looks like in practice. So, Regulation is slow and it's deliberate. It's activities that challenge your dog mentally, emotionally, and physically, but at a pace that allows them to practice self control. Now, this can be structured enrichment, controlled training games, scent work, food puzzles, just your basic foundational training exercises like obedience, if that's what you want to do, that just require a bit of focus and calm decision making. The dog is still working, okay? They are still engaging, they are still active, but they're learning to do it in a calm, measured way. And this is going to give you so much more bang for your buck long term. A great example of something really simple that you can commit to working on is simply teaching your dog to settle on a settle mat. The value that this would bring to so many areas of your life, if you really committed to nailing this, would be phenomenal. And if not that, then at least slowing down the pace of the active work that you are already doing with them. So instead of like a frenzied back to back chase the tennis ball recall, why not teach a wait, seek, and retrieve instead? And this is where you throw the ball, but the dog doesn't chase the movement. Instead, you both wait for the ball to land and then you release them to search out the ball and retrieve it. Now, this is an entirely different activity. It engages scenting and tracking, which is completely different to responding to the chase drive. And it has an incredibly regulating effect. There's deliberate decision making, there's impulse control, there's calmer movement. And you've only had to make one small, tiny tweak to your usual game of fetch to get there, right? And if you think that's too much of a stretch for your dog at this point, like they're never going to sit still while you throw a ball, just play and find it, just with some edible food treats scattered around the room or throughout your garden where the dog has to sniff and track and problem solve at their own pace, can also be incredibly regulating. All of these activities, they use the brain and body in a way that encourages calm without relying on sheer exhaustion in the slightest. And the benefit of all this is that regulated activity also translates to better behavior outside of any training sessions, because a dog that learns to regulate their energy during these games and exercises is more likely to then stay calm on walks or when they are at the vet or in the car or when you have visitors arrive, when the doorbell rings. They are learning to manage themselves rather than constantly relying on you doing what you do, or just the state of sheer physical exhaustion to control their behavior and to limit it. Now, that being said, I've said it once in this episode and I do want to say it again because I think in the world of social media and content and sound bites and all of that jazz, I think people really quickly want to just polarize everything they hear these days. Like physical exercise is out, sniffy games are in. I'm definitely not saying that. An under exercised dog is not your friend. We cannot and must not ignore exertion completely. Dogs absolutely need a healthy amount of physical activity. We've got them living inside our houses like 24/7. It's not a natural way for them to live. And like I said, this is especially true for working breeds, high energy breeds, and adolescent dogs going through all of the struggles of that hideous hormonal phase that drives us all to despair. And to be fair, all jokes aside, it drives a lot of them into rescue centres. Teenage dogs are the most likely age group to be rehomed because people just don't know what to do with them. And the trick is blending the two: enough exercise to satisfy physical needs paired with plenty of regulation work to teach your dog to manage their own energy as well. Think of it as a ratio you need to achieve, like a little equation: exercise plus regulation equals balance. And that ratio obviously isn't the same for every dog. Of course, it's not. Some dogs may need a lot longer walks, but maybe not really a lot of structured enrichment, while others may need shorter walks and a lot of mental and emotional regulation exercises. This is where knowing your dog's individual temperament, their personality, their triggers, their energy profile, all becomes really critical to coming up with the best plan for you and the best plan for them. Another key area to consider is the impact of overstimulation outside of any kind of formal exercise that you are doing with them. So, high energy dogs often have hyperactive lives in ways that we don't even always consider or notice. Constant household commotion, unstructured social interactions, or exposure to high stimulus environments. All of these contribute to a nervous system that is just always switched on. So, what is your household like? Is it noisy? Is it chaotic? Are there a lot of children running about? Is the routine predictable, or does it fluctuate quite significantly? Is there shift work? Regulation work isn't just about the structured exercises that you do and making sure everything's really fine tuned during a training session and just throwing the rest of the day against the wall and seeing where it lands. It's about helping your dog cope with life itself and everything that happens out on the walks, when they're at home, and everything in between. And don't underestimate the influence of your own energy here as well. Dogs are incredibly sensitive to the people around them. I've said it before, I'll say it again. If you're stressed, if you're rushed, if you are overstimulated, your dog's nervous system picks up on that and mirrors it. So, a big part of achieving a calmer dog is learning to model calmness yourself, pausing before engaging, using a slow, steady voice, and being deliberate in your interactions, even the way you move through a room that your dog is in. All of this stuff can help to reinforce the regulation exercises that you are doing, or it can help to hinder them, depending on the energy that you are bringing. So, what does all of this look like on a practical day to day level? If you wanted to get home and think, okay, I've listened to the podcast episode, I get it, I'm ready to action this stuff, let's go. So, you might start your day with a short, brisk walk to provide that physical exercise that we all agree is necessary. I'm a big fan of getting dogs out for their first walk in the morning. They've just slept all night. Let's give them something to do and something to think about. Then you might move into a structured regulation activity like a little scent game or a controlled training session where the dog needs to give a bit of focus, a bit of thought, and they need to just respond calmly and they need to keep themselves measured. So for me, I during the week I get up at 6 a.m. My dogs head outside, they go to the toilet, and then they come in and they just chill out and potter for a while I'm like pottering around, emptying the dishwasher, all of that muggle life stuff, right? They eat their breakfast at about 7 a.m., 10 to 7, that kind of time. And then at about 8:30, quarter to 9, we head out for our morning walk. It's usually about 45 minutes, sometimes it's an hour. And then we get home, and sometimes I will do a quick scatter feed in the garden so they can just go out there and like sniff around, sniff out the treats for 10, 15 minutes. Sometimes I don't bother. It depends on what the walk's been like. And we'll always, pretty much without fail, follow that with a rest or settling period. Pretty much it's just a big nap because that's when I sit down to work. And I'm going to be at my desk for the next 2 or 3 hours. Over time, if you can be consistent with this, you are teaching the dog this is how we move, this is how we regulate, this is how we rest. And of course, like anything with dog training, it's a process. Of course, it's a process. You are not going to fix a fizzy reactive dog in one day. You're just not. But with consistency and an understanding of the difference between exertion and genuine regulation, you can dramatically change the dynamic in your home. And eventually, you will grow a dog who is capable of calmness, not just when they're tired and worn out, but because they've learned how to manage their own nervous system effectively. Now, it's worth noting here, I know the temptation to overdo everything is a very real thing. Sometimes when we set our minds on changing something, we want results really fast. We want the problem solved yesterday, even though, ironically, we've been letting it fester away for years up until this point. And so we pile on the walks and we introduce loads of play sessions. We go from like 0 to 6 sessions a day out of nowhere and all of these high intensity games because we're on it. But in reality, too much too fast can just overstimulate the dog and make the problem worse. Remember that quote from the Formula One movie? Have you seen the F1 movie with Brad Pitt? My brother is in that film, by the way. What a legend. My brother is not Brad Pitt, but he does feature briefly in that movie. Right, I'm probably going to butcher this quote now, but I think it's slow is smooth and smooth is fast. So to achieve the results that you want, you have to slow down. You have to get intentional and focus on quality over quantity. And that ultimately is what will get you there the fastest. So, here's a few questions for you to think about to wrap up today's episode. What is my dog's baseline energy? What triggers overstimulation for them? Which activities calm them and which activities excite them? And the answers to those questions will hopefully guide the balance between exercise and regulation that you need to be striving for and help you create a daily rhythm that works for your unique dog. It's probably also worth saying, as with any kind of behavioral struggle, I always encourage owners to think beyond just walks and training. Nutrition, sleep, environment, all of that stuff, it all plays a big role in nervous system regulation as well. Dogs who are undernourished or sleep deprived or living in constantly chaotic environments tend to find it much harder to regulate. So, when we talk about creating a calmer dog, I'm definitely talking about taking as holistic an approach as possible. Body, mind, environment, all of it working together for the greater good. So, here's your key takeaway for today. A calmer, more settled dog is not built by just wearing them out. It is built ultimately by teaching them how to regulate themselves, blending that with enough physical activity to meet their energy needs, and paying attention to their environment and their lifestyle. Regulation is slow, it's intentional, and it's deliberate. It's about teaching your dog to manage themselves, which is far more powerful and sustainable long term than just trying to tire them out. Okay, right. Thank you so much for listening today. If you're feeling in any way inspired or motivated to dig deeper into some structured exercises that teach self regulation, mental focus, impulse control, all of that juicy stuff, I've got some amazing resources on my website to help you create that daily balance for your dog. You can head on over to listendogtraining.com if you want to check those out. If you want to see what me and my dogs are up to and check out all the free tutorials and training games we post, you can come and find me on Instagram at listendogtraining. But for now, I shall love you and leave you to enjoy the rest of your dog walk, whatever it is you're up to right now. And I will see you same time next week for another episode of The Walk and Talk.